For a century and a half, archaeology operated on a specific logic. If a site contained a Norse sword, a Scandinavian oval brooch, or the ruins of a longhouse, researchers assumed they had found ethnically Scandinavian people. This map reflects the traditional record, a unified, ethnic expansion of Norse colonists moving along these red routes to dominate the North Atlantic. The evidence seemed undeniable in places like Orkney, Scotland. Grave VK202 contained a spear, a whetstone, and silver coins, the textbook kit of a high-status Norse warrior at the peak of Scandinavian power. Thousands of miles away, Meadows in Newfoundland provided the visual proof for a corresponding narrative. The ruins of these turf-covered houses were classified as a permanent North American Viking colony. But when researchers recently applied whole genome sequencing and cosmic ray carbon dating to these exact sites, the data contradicted the historical consensus. The Scottish Viking and the Canadian colony were based on a misunderstanding of the evidence. The Viking Age was not defined by a simple genetic replacement. It was an era of cultural franchising, where Norse identity was often a tool for pragmatic survival. In 2020, a team in Copenhagen sequenced 442 ancient genomes to create a precise map of the Viking world's genetic spread. When they processed the results for the warrior in Orkney grave VK202, they found that he was 85% Celtic. He had 0 Scandinavian ancestry. His Y chromosome belonged to haplogroup RA151, an indigenous British Isles marker distinct from Scandinavian signatures. His maternal line was also local. He was a 100% indigenous Pict living and dying as a Viking. He was buried with a silver penny from the Anglo-Saxon King Edmund, following Norse pagan customs to the letter, despite having no genetic link to the Norse homeland. These indigenous Picts utilized a specific survival strategy. Rather than resisting, families adopted Norse customs so effectively they stayed in power for generations. In Orkney, Viking was a professional identity. It was a brand that local populations could adopt to navigate a dangerous new political reality. If the Norse were focused on absorbing local populations in Scotland, we have to look at their operational strategy in North America through that lens of pragmatism. Meadows lacks the markers of a true colony. Archaeologists have found no graves, no long-term farmland, and no livestock pens. A 2021 study used a cosmic ray carbon spike from the year 993 to date the site. By counting exactly 28 rings outward from that spike to the bark, they confirmed that the trees here were felled in 1021 AD. The discovery of butternut remnants and wood fragments from trees that only grow further south indicates the site was used as a staging ground for deeper explorations of the mainland. The layout of the buildings, including specialized workshops for boat repair, reveals a focus on resource gathering. The Norse were performing temporary strategic resource extraction. They were collecting timber and iron to ship back to their homes in the east, not attempting to build a permanent society in the west. Those extraction missions were fueled by the economy of Norse Greenland. The settlers there hunted walruses for ivory, which they traded with Europe for the iron and timber they couldn't produce locally. But then North Atlantic temperatures dropped. The Little Ice Age brought violent storms and longer winters that threatened the entire trade network. As the glaciers expanded, the weight of the ice sheet pressed the land down and caused local sea levels to rise. This flooded the already scarce pastures needed to keep cattle and sheep alive through the winter. Simultaneously, the trade market for walrus ivory collapsed. European merchants shifted their interest to cheaper elephant ivory coming from Africa, leaving the Greenlanders with an expensive, dangerous product that no one wanted to buy. By the mid-15th century, the settlements were defunct. These ruins at Whalsay Church mark a colony that could no longer sustain itself. The expansion hit a wall. When the environment turned hostile and the ivory business failed, the Norse had to abandon their North American outposts. The discoveries in Scotland and Canada dismantle the old idea of a unified wave of Scandinavian genetic conquest. The Viking Age was an era of extreme pragmatism. It was less about where you were born and more about how you could generate wealth and opportunity. In the unpopulated West, they conducted temporary resource extraction. In the populated East, they absorbed local cultures into their own operational structure. The Picts survived by adopting the branding and weapons of the Norse, maintaining their presence in Orkney for a millennium while appearing to have vanished from the record. History is written by the victors, but it is recorded in the DNA they leave behind. And that DNA shows that the most successful Viking conquests were actually cultural transformations.